to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The opportunity to present its case. This is a trial in certain regards. The Borough Council serves as the judge and jury. Only one person can talk at a time. The stenographers will take everything down. If there's an objection for whatever reason, please stop. We'll sort it out. I indicated a few moments ago before we went on the record the importance of signing up. We have a number of people who did sign up, and I just want to indicate that, as I said before off the record, certain individuals, because of their proximity to where Alaran proposes to put this use in place, may become or may qualify as an intervener. An intervener sounds like a really goofy term, but it means nothing more than that. They have the right to intervene in a matter like this and serve as a party. So in other words, there's no question that the principal party is Alaran, represented tonight by Anthony Walter from Hall, Pennsylvania. And if you qualify as a party, we're going to seat you up here at this adjacent table. And as I also explained off the record, it comes down to a little bit like plaintiff and defendant, although they're not roles that we will hear tonight. So one of the first things I want to indicate is to serve as, to qualify as an intervener, you effectively have to have some sort of cognizable relationship with the property you're talking about. You generally know where the property is. It's just north of Waymart on the main highway going north. And I'll read one of the listings from the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania. To that end, appellate courts consistently hold property owners are indispensable parties to lawsuits affecting their property rights. So that's really one of the principal tests. So if I came as an individual and I wanted to have party status and I lived in Holmesville, Pennsylvania, I probably would not qualify. But if I had property in and about Waymart, I probably would qualify as an intervener. Before we get started, I just want to go down the list. Many of you, or most of you, were very good about signing up, and I really appreciate this. We have to kind of go through this, and I'm going to read the names of the individuals who believe they have intervener status. And before we get started, we have to first make sure we know how many parties we have and who the parties are. So the first one, we have Gwendolyn Brown. Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown has indicated that she believes she's an intervener. And could you just be kind enough to stand, identify yourself, spell your name, and provide your address for the stenographer, and indicate for the record why you believe that you should be granted party or intervener status.
Thank you. I am Gwendolyn Brown, W-E-N-D-E-L-I-N, Brown, like the color. My address is 46 Buckland Lane, or P.O. Box 705, Waymart, 18472. Buckland Lane is Elk Lake in Clinton Township. I believe that I would have party status based on my property ownership so nearby. This is my community. This is my zip code. Additionally, I have concerns related to how Waymart Borough implements and applies their own zoning ordinance, because that will certainly impact me going forward.
Mr. Walden, be curious while you're Ms. Brown. And any of these applications for intervener are subject to examination by Alaran Council. But go ahead.
Sure.
Ms. Brown, you indicated you live on Buckland Lane, and that's adjacent to Elk Lake, am I correct?
Lakefront, yes.
Okay, so it's on the lake, yeah. And that's in Clinton Township, so you do not own any property in Waymart Borough, is that correct?
No, I don't.
And approximately how far is your property from the property that's being proposed, the former Mellow Meadows?
Under 4 miles.
4 miles, okay, so almost 4 miles. All right, 3 miles, we'll take that. I'm going to object to her intervener status, and you know I don't do that normally without a zoning meeting. But the Commonwealth Court has held that the only time that somebody from outside of the municipality is going to be held is if they have property that's immediately adjacent to the subject property. So if you're right on the edge of the way on the borough, you live in the next town, you're right there, you can see the property, and that was going to be involved.
have is.
Pardon me,
Jay?
may I speak otherwise? That's the question then.
I didn't hear you, ma'am.
May I speak otherwise?
No, but we've already made a ruling on that. The next individual, J.R.
I did complete on the form that I'm speaking for someone else. Am I,
Ma'am, please.
can I
This is
speak
a
for
trial.
someone else?
No. The objections by Alderan's counsel was sustained.
Why may I not speak for someone else?
Because you're not a party, ma'am. We have to go through this.
I see.
It's gonna take us an hour just to go through parties, okay?
Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Four.
My name is Jay Spoor, last name spelled S in Sam, Q in Paul, O-R-E-R, kind of directly across the road from the property in question. Probably, if you say our properties go to the center of the road, our properties touch.
Mr. Walter.
I have no objection to be considered an
So J.R. Spore, S-P-O-R-E-R, correct?
Correct.
And your address, 189 Belmont Turnpike, Waymart, Pennsylvania, 18472?
Correct.
Okay, so Mr. Spore will qualify as an intervener, so if you hang on to that. We have Donald McDonough. Donald McDonough.
And Cheryl.
I'm sorry, I'm only reading one sheet at a time. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, no, my name should be right on that same. Your husband is Mike.
I'm reading the one that says here Donald, but go ahead, ma'am, if you're connected with Donald,
Yeah.
go ahead.
45 years. Okay,
Hey, spell your full name, please.
C-H-E-R-Y-L, McDonough, M-C, capital D-O-N-O-U-G-H. My address is 117 Silvercrest Drive, Waymart, 18472. I live approximately a half a block from the facility. I could view the facility from my back deck.
Attorney Waldron.
I have no objection.
Okay, so I have Donald H. McDonough. Okay, so the two of you then are party interveners, correct?
Okay, correct.
I have here Paul and Barb Goodnight.
Yes.
Can you
Name
please?
is Barbara Goodnight, E-O-D-U-N-A-J-E-C.
Go ahead, ma'am.
We live at 151 Belmont Turnpike, which is about a tenth of a mile from the facility.
Attorney Waldron.
No objection. Could we get us on the list?
P-O-D-U-N-A-J-E-C, correct?
Yes.
And we'll make copies of all these and send them as well, so we have a second. Elise, then A. Kern.
So it's Elise Bonanen,
I'm sorry.
B-O-N-A-H-N-E-N. My address is 33 Wayman Drive, Waymart. My property is directly touching the property in question.
Attorney Waldron. Okay, that's, I think you did spell it for the record. I mispronounced it, I'm sorry.
That's
Okay. Do you have the spelling?
Capital D-O-N, capital A-H-N-E-N.
Thank you.
Marietta Miller. I'm probably saying that incorrect, I'm sorry.
Maria Miller, M-A-R-I-A, Miller, M-I-L-L-E-R, 175 Belmont Turnpike, Waymart, and we're adjacent to the property separated by 296.
Attorney Waldron.
Just quickly to clarify, when you say you're adjacent to it, separated by the highway, does that mean you're directly across from it?
Across.
Okay. I have no objection.
Catherine Miller. Catherine Miller.
All right, so it's Caitlin,
Yeah,
K-A-I.
just speak up a little bit.
Caitlin,
I'm sorry.
K-A-I-T-O-N. Okay. 173 Belmont Turnpike. We are the property that is diagonal, divided by 296 from the center.
Attorney Waldron.
No objection.
So, Ms. Miller qualifies. Joshua Miller.
Yeah, I live at 173 Belmont Turnpike too. We're just diagonal. I mean, we live together.
All right.
No objection.
So I get this straight. check the box intervener, I'm not reading your name, so that's why. And you all understand what I've indicated before. It's not really any appellate court decisions in Pennsylvania, but the suggestion is that if you believe you have party status, now's the time to step forward. And if not, if you read the bottom of those sheets, and I think in a certain regard, I read it as a compliment from the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania when they were referring to what I had done in the case of Palmyra Township, Pike County. Failure to be recognized and received as an intervener would foreclose any appellate rights you have in a matter like this. So I have Edward Howell. I saw him here. Oh, there he is. Oh, Richard. Go ahead. Tell us why you believe you're an intervener, sir.
So I own, I
Here,
farm
here. Spell your name for the record, please.
EDWARD, last name Howell, HOWELL. I have farmland that we farm, which is directly across from the residential area at Silvercrest, and my residence borders Waymart Borough. It is in Clinton Township, across from where this parcel is located.
Pretty well.
The parcel that you said that you own, that's in the borough, correct?
The farmland in the borough, and I also own the funeral home here in this borough.
And how large is that parcel approximately?
23 acres.
And is it directly across from the Mallard Meadows building, or nearby? Or
It is somewhat diagonal. It's directly behind the Silvercrest residential area, which is diagonal from, but across the road.
Okay, so that'd be northwest, am I correct?
It would be roughly, yes.
Approximately how far from your property to Mallard Meadows? From the edge of your property to Mallard Meadows?
A quarter of a mile.
I'm not sure.
How you're a party. I have Judy Ann Normanton. I'm sorry. Say that again, sorry.
So it's James White, -ANN. My last name is Normanton. It's NORMANDIN. And I live on Solomon Hill in the area. I don't have property in Waymart, but I did want to speak on behalf of the treatment center coming. Because I used to work for a big psychiatric hospital in the East Coast out in Boston. And I know a lot of people have concerns about addiction treatment centers coming to their communities.
Attorney Wallner.
Based on what she indicated, I'm going to object to her being qualified as a party. I do want to clarify, since there are names that were provided, people signed these. You would, after the presentation of our side of the case, and any witnesses that the interveners might want to call or testify on their own behalf, they have a right to do, there will be an opportunity for comment. Okay, you will be allowed to comment, whether you think it's a good idea or a bad idea or whatever. So that will be allowed if you gave that name on the list. And in fact, if you even want to raise your hand, you do have to identify who you are and where you live. So somebody that comes over from Scranton really doesn't have the right to necessarily participate in this because it's a Waymart Borough issue. But if you live nearby, you do, as I just indicated there, even though the previous person indicated they live outside the borough, they own property. But you will be given an opportunity, you just won't have the right to cross-examine witnesses and present your own evidence.
Objection sustained. But as Attorney Wallner just explained, and I thought I probably didn't explain it well enough on the record, but anybody at the conclusion of the testimony, the formal testimony, has the right to speak pro or con in regard to the application, including Ms. Normanton. So, Eugene Hedeker, am I pronouncing that right, sir?
Yes.
Go ahead. Can you spell your last name, please?
HEDEICHER. And property is at 119 Prospect Street.
What's your relationship with the Halloran application, sir?
Relationship with it?
Proximity to the property.
Oh,
Bunch of Wadir, but your subject, your Wadir, Mr. Hedeker.
Yeah. I know
Susan, is it Gallione? Okay, ma'am. Please stand. Recite and spell your name, please.
S-U-S-A-N, Galeone, G-A-L-E-O-N-E. My post office number is, post office 367, and my address is 18 West Shore Road.
And your connection with the application, ma'am.
I was just interested in what's happening.
What here, Ms. Gallione?
Where is that location?
It's at Outlet.
Okay, so you are in Clinton Township.
Yeah, that's right.
And you said you were interested in the hearing. I should clarify this for everybody. Doesn't mean that you can't be here, doesn't mean you can't comment. It's just a question of whether you're going to be allowed to challenge testimony, and even have a right to appeal to the court if you don't like the decision. Okay? That's why we have to study whether people will qualify. I am going to object to this witness that's been reminded as well.
Objection sustained. Trudy Haddon.
TrudyHaddен, and I live on 34 West Shore Road, Elkley.
In your connection with the application, ma'am.
Interest.
What your involvement.
I assume that you would, so I'm going to make the same objection.
Objection sustained. Barbara Lutat. Well, just say and spell your name, please.
Barbara, B-A-R-B-A-R, Lutat, L-U-T-A, and I'm at 27 Simpson Time Road.
In your connection with the application,
It was
ma'am.
just an
What your
Well, I think I will just skip to the objection.
objection sustained. Pastor Sal Marirana.
S-A-L, last name M-A-I-O-R-A-N-A. And we're located about, 2 miles, give or take, in the borough, representing the church.
When you said the church, sir, I can read it, but
The Waymark Church.
just for the record, state the church.
The Waymark Church.
Very well.
Mr. Mayor, where is the church located?
On 596 Holmesdale Road.
And that's within the borough, am I correct?
Correct.
I have no objection.
I take it, sir, that you're moving to serve as an intervener in the name of Waymar Church, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that intervener status is granted. So we're back to the beginning. Did I miss anybody that believes they have intervener status? Okay. Is there any reason why you didn't fill out a sheet?
They may not have interviewed.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Can you please stand and I'll find your name, please?
Linda Drake, D-R-A-K-E.
Can you just indicate for the record your connection with this application, ma'am?
Our land side by side.
So am I correct, Ms. Drake, that your property
On the
borders
north
this?
side, borders on the entire north side.
Then I have no objection.
And
As long as you, I comment to the Secretary's office. I missed somebody else, Karen? Okay. Mr. Pavlo, would you raise your hand? Did I miss you, sir?
I thought I checked with your reader.
There's no check, but can you just say your name and spell it for the court?
Joseph.
Please.
Joseph Pavlovich, P-A-V-L-O-V-I-C-H. I border 600-700 feet along this south side of the project. I'm on the north, they're on the south side, right up against me.
sorry, I didn't, could you spell your last name? I didn't get it.
Pavlovich.
I have no objection.
Okay. Pavlovich, you are granted intervener status. Is this anybody else?
Yes.
Yes? Oh, okay.
Denise Johnson, and I thought I checked.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Denise Johnson, Johnsson, and I am
Hang
next.
on 1 second. Oh, Denise and Vincent Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
We are adjacent, separated by like 700 feet, from the property. You can see the property from our front door and from our front window. We are right next to it, just back a little bit.
Just to clarify, is that on the same side of
We're next.
296?
Yes, we're right next to it.
Then, no.
So Denise and Vincent Johnson are granted joint intervener status. Anybody else?
Wayne Meacham.
Can you state your full name and spell it, please, sir?
I'm Wayne Maychek. Wayne is in the county. Maychek, M-A-Y-C-H-E-K. My address is 9 Maychek Drive in Waymart, and I am, as a crow flies, 1/10 of a mile away from the office.
Your connection with this application is what, sir?
I'm within 1/10 of a mile of the facility.
I didn't quite hear what you said at the beginning. Is your property within the borough?
Oh, yes, it is.
Yes, of course. And is it towards the borough or is it the other way?
It's towards the
Towards
borough.
the downtown part of the borough?
It's not, it's on the north side of Route 6, which means I'm within 1/10 of a mile of the facility, and I can see it from my front door. I'm 4 houses down, yes. 4 houses closer.
You may check your granted intervener status, sir. Who else did I miss?
Sarah Hine.
Go ahead, ma'am, please. And spell your name, please.
Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, Hine, H-I-N-E, and at 154 Belmont Turnpike, about 4 blocks down from the residence on the same side.
And are you a resident of the borough as well?
Yes.
No objection.
Sign your granted intervener status. Yes, ma'am.
Jennifer Robleski. Jennifer?
Can you spell your last name, ma'am, please?
W-R-O-B-L-E-S-K-I. I'm at 136 Belmont Turnpike. My husband Jack and I own and operate J&J Trailer and Auto, a trailer dealership. I'm about 1/10 of a mile away from the property. I ordered Jack's property.
No objection.
Okay, so Mr. Robleski, you've indicated you have a business email, but you're appearing, you and your husband are appearing individually, is that correct?
Oh, I thought we were both
I
from.
didn't hear. Ma'am, I live at 4 West. I take it no objection. Mr. Robleski, you and your partner are added as interveners in this matter. Did I miss anybody else? Anybody else? Last call.
Yes, you did.
Yes, ma'am.
Debbie Alpini. G-A-L-L-I-P-A-N-I. Live on 198 Belmont Turnpike, right next to the mountains. However, it's my home, but I live in it.
Please refer to what I said at the very beginning. This young lady is going to take down everything that everybody says, and only one person can talk at a time. And this is no different than a court of law. So, okay, so Mrs. Galpani, can you indicate for the record your connection with Alorand's application?
I live right next door.
No objection.
So I have your Devin,
Kevin.
Kevin, it's K-E-V-E-N?
K-E-V-I-N.
Okay. So the Galpanis are granted intervener status. Did we miss anybody else? Okay, so the opportunity to effectively raise record. Now, when you're granted intervener status, we don't have enough council tables, of course, but you will have the right, one at a time, in the same order that Ms. Hess is going to read the names off, to cross-examine any of the witnesses that are presented by the applicant. And it's the time, I'll go over this again, at that specific time, is to ask questions. If you want to present your case, you present your case later on in this proceedings, and it might not even be finished tonight, to be perfectly honest. So, I apologize, we got off to a little bit of a slow start, but Ms. Hess, if you would just for the record indicate the names or the identity of the interviewers.
J.R. Spoor.
So, before Ms. Hess reads the next name, as we go through this, you will be called upon to present whatever you want to do or cross-examine any witnesses in the same order every time. Otherwise, the record will be unbelievable to follow. Okay, go ahead, please, ma'am.
Donald and Sherry McDonough. Paul and Barb Goodnight. Elise Van Anen. Maria Miller. Caitlin and Joshua Miller. Edward Howell. Eugene Hediger. Pastor Sal Mariana. Linda Drake. Joe Pavlovich. Denise and Vincent Johnson. Wayne Maychek. Sarah Hine. Jennifer Wobleski. Deb and Kevin Gallahan.
So this will be the order that we will follow. It will be the opportunity to cross-examine in that same order every time the applicant finishes with the direct testimony of any of their witnesses. Okay? So, that having been said, we're going to just take 3 minutes to go off the record. I'm going to provide these to Attorney. Not a copy machine.
No, sorry.
You can provide these to Attorney Waldron if you want to take a peek at them. I think
I did show them to me before the hearing and then looked at it for you.
Okay.
I have no objection to those being admitted.
So we're about ready to proceed. What I'm going to ask, obviously, I said this already. Counsel is, in a case like this, judge and jury. This is a conditional use. Conditional uses are uses that are permitted under your ordinance. They have to pass the muster effectively of borough council. There are similar uses that are provided in zoning ordinances, such as special exceptions. They have to go in front of the zoning hearing board. But conditional uses go in front of borough council. Now, I started to say conditional uses. Conditional uses, and part of the process here would be, and I'm going to identify the borough exhibits in a few moments before we really get started. A conditional use is identified under the ordinance, and the ordinance that we're using is the one that was most recently codified by Consultant Thomas Shepstone this past summer. And it bears the date of 2023. And the conditional use defined as section 125.5 is a use which is not appropriate to a particular zone district as a whole, but which may be suitable in certain localities within the district, only when specific conditions and factors prescribed for such cases within this chapter are present. Conditional uses are allowed or denied by the Waymark Borough Council after recommendations by the Waymark Planning Committee. Now, as an aside to this, there's really no formal standing planning commission in Waymark Borough. So weeks ago, presented a little bit of a fact-finding session, and maybe some of you folks were here. It drew a fairly good crowd, so we will not have, nor do we anticipate, any recommendation from the Borough Planning Commission. It didn't exist. There are certain conditions that will always be attached in any situation, but particularly in a situation like this, because you have to look to section 12538, and this talks about non-conforming uses and structures and lots. And the issue, and this is one of the things I'm sure that will be presented by the applicant, but also potential for cross-examination or presentation by any of the interveners. This is not a non-conforming use, it's a pre-regulatory use, it wasn't a pre-regulatory use or whatever. But that is provided for, as I just indicated, in section 12538. There are also, and found in most land use ordinances or zoning ordinances, performance standards that attach to commercial or manufacturing uses and uses in or around or adjacent to residential uses. These are all things that the applicant, I'm sure, will probably address, and these are all things that are appropriate for cross-examination and presentation by any of the individuals who are having granted intervener status. So, before we get started any further, I'm going to ask counsel from that end of the table to identify themselves for the record. As I said, this borough council will serve as the judge and jury in this case. And my instructions to them already in written form a couple of weeks ago was their main job is to sit and listen and make a decision based upon the testimony that is developed here and only here. Sir?
John R. Thor.
Please spell your name for the record.
Pardon me?
Spell your name for the record. You can speak out. Go ahead.
John Miller.
Teresa Stratton, Stratton.
Darren Howell, DARRENHOWEL.
Chip Narella, I'm not a councilman, I am the mayor, NORELLA.
Craig Spiewak, SPEWAK, council member.
Jane Barkle, BARCOE, and I'm vice president.
Shane Bailey, BAYLY.
Mr. Bailey is council president. I think I've already identified Heather Hess as the borough secretary, conventional spelling HESS. So at this point, I want to read into the record the exhibits that the borough has already marked, and I've provided them, or at least a few of these, to Attorney Waldron on behalf of Valorant. This is an application for conditional use. Again, you have to feed back into the ordinance itself. Why is it a conditional use? Because that's what effectively it says. The borough exhibits are on a sheet that's dated April 30, 2024, and borough exhibit number 1 is the application for the conditional use. It's under date of March 12, 2024. It's on stationery from R. Anthony Waldron, attorney at law, Hawley, Pennsylvania. Exhibit number 2 is a letter that came with the original $1,000 hearing application fee. We do not have a copy of the but we're using borough exhibit number 2 to report, to indicate or support the fact that the applicant did submit a $1,000 hearing fee. Exhibit number 3 is a copy of the legal notice that appeared in the newspaper. Exhibit number 4, 1 of 2 pages, affidavit of publication indicating when it was when it appeared. Actually, it's only 1 page, even though it's 1 of 2. Borough exhibit number 5 is the certificate of posting. The property was posted as required under the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. There's photographs of where the property was posted. There's also photographs of where the The notice of the hearing is posted in other prominent positions in Waymark Borough. Exhibit number 6 is what I've styled as a conditional use application, and I put it together, or I identified it as the applicant plan. It specifically talks about location, present owner, proposed use, etc. And it's also submitted on correspondence of March 12, 2024, signed by R. Anthony Waldron, the attorney for Allen. And we've also marked for an exhibit, Borough Exhibit number 7, the Waymark Borough zoning ordinance. It indicates that it was originally adopted in August 8, 1988, amended through July of 2023, and as I've indicated already, recodified in the summer of 2023. So effectively, the date of that ordinance is, I think, was honored about July of 2023. So it's only about 7 days. Although the content of this is very similar to some of the previous land use provisions that were adopted and provided and followed in Waymark Borough. So having said that, we will, before we leave here tonight, I think we're going to give all of the exhibits to our court stenographer. I presume you'll come back if we need you again, or will we send somebody else?
It may be, it might be.
And to avoid confusion, I think we're going to, without objection from any of the parties, including the Allen Council, then we're going to have Ms. Hess be the keeper of the exhibit records. Is that okay? Okay. So that having been said, Mr. Waldron, go ahead if you would begin presenting your case, please.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. I'm going to do a brief introduction, and then I'm going to call my first witness, and I will try and keep it brief since we're moving along here. I am Tony Waldron. I was here with my clients back on March 5th, and we did an informational session. It was very helpful, both hopefully it was helpful to some of the people in the audience, but also to my clients in terms of hearing what the concerns were. The applicant is referred to here, and by the way, I submitted the application, which marks as D6, I think it is, along with that cover letter that's D1. Based on consultation with the borough secretary, there isn't actually a formal conditional use application. I don't think those things come up as much here in the borough as they do in some other places. But nonetheless, that's why it's submitted in somewhat of a letter form, because there is no formal application requirement. But I did submit that on March 12th. I would note for the record, because Pennsylvania law requires that you have to have the hearing within 60 days of the application, that requirement has been met. Not quite 60 days out from March 12th. I'm going to refer, in the interest of trying to not have to be any wordier than I already am, the applicant is Allen Recovery Holdings, LLC. And that is the entity that has, would be the owner and operator of the property if this gets approved and the use there. But that's also the party that entered into an understanding with the owner of the property, which is an entity called KDLG Real Estate LLC. The principal of that, Rob Grimm, is here tonight. He's going to testify about a couple of things related to that and confirming that agreement still remains in effect. But I'm going to call Allen Recovery Holdings as ARH. The simpler way to keep track of it, in some of their arrangements in terms of the business arrangements, they go by that. So when you hear ARH, I'm talking about Allen Recovery Holdings. Okay? What's being proposed is a alcohol and drug inpatient rehabilitation facility with a detoxification unit. You're going to hear a bit of testimony as to what that means. Some of that was explained back in the beginning of March, but we're going to explain that again to make sure it's on the record. How that works. It so happens that one of the reasons why my client is involved with this project is that they already do operate a similar type of facility, albeit smaller, in the southern part of Wayne County, outside of Hamlin. It's a lake area outside of Hamlin in Salem County. And so you're going to hear about that. In fact, that's one of the reasons why they're interested in this project. The zoning for that property, since it got mentioned here, is actually the property zone industrial, which is somewhat unique. And in fact, that zone does not list as a permitted use or even a conditional use drug and alcohol treatment centers. Actually, drug and alcohol treatment centers are not listed anywhere in the borough. That's not necessarily a defect of the ordinance, because not all ordinances have every conceivable use. I've been doing zoning work for 43 years now in Pike and Wayne counties, and I've dealt with zoning matters over most of those years. So it's not surprising. Interestingly enough, nursing homes are also not allowed in that zone. And of course, as many of you know, have been around for a while. Mallard Meadows operated as a nursing home for 19 years, closed a few years ago, and right now, part if not all the buildings used by the daycare. That's also not a use that's allowed in that zone. However, those uses are not illegal, they're not offensive, and they've been allowed by the borough to continue. Because they're not listed in that makes them a non-conforming use. Non-conforming just means it doesn't conform to the ordinance. It doesn't make it illegal. It's not like somebody who says, I don't care about permits, I'm just going to go open a business and do whatever I please. No. I'm sure that there was consultations and everybody agreed that was an appropriate use to go in there. Way back when, I believe it was zoned that because I believe there was a sewing machine, a business or a factory type of thing there back when the ordinance first got written, which would have been in the 80s. And that happens oftentimes too, that you zone it one way based on what's already there, and then things change. Everything changes. Sometimes we don't like change, but that's the reality. So the reason I bothered to explain that to you is we were asking for a change of the non-conforming use. And the case is to be made that we are a similar use to a nursing home, in the sense that there's medical services provided. Also that we do not propose to expand, my client does not propose to expand the building. We're going to utilize the building that's there. There's going to be some interior renovations, somewhat extensive, but there's not going to be any additions or more area being utilized for this particular building. So Richard Henry has correctly identified, and he reviewed the application, that if you want to change the non-conforming use, the ordinance allows for you to do that. But the way to do that is through a public hearing and a process called conditional use. So that's why we're here. I think you all know where the property is, but just for the record, it's identified as being at 186 Belmont Turnpike, Waymar, PA. It's approximately 6 acres, not approximately, the tax record showed it as 6.00 acres. It's a rectangle, and it has a 31,000 square foot building on the property, formerly known as Mallard Meadows for the longest period of time. I've prepared just a list of the witnesses that are going to be called. Give everybody some news to keep track of, also give it to her. We don't begin to spelling and things like that. I think I have one for every council member and for the stenographer and for Attorney Henry. I might have to have the mayor sheriff who I was counting different. No offense at all. The very top of this just refers to why we're here, but and now you'll see that I've marked there Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2, A1 and A2. The only two exhibits I have I've marked today for applicant 1 and 2, okay? Those two exhibits, the first one is reference there that we have an interest in the property. That's because of an agreement that we entered into between Halloran, A-R-H, and KLPG Real Estate LLC, and I have marked that as Exhibit A1. I'm going to give that, I just said before this, I'm going to give that to the council president, to the attorney, and to the stenographer. And the other item I'm going to have, which I think everybody knows what it already looks like, but I did blow up on the Wayne County tax map the property showing the building and identifying it by its tax parcel number and also by the amount of acreage, which is 6.00 acres. They're the only two physical exhibits that I intend to present. And so at this point, I'd like to call Katie Hendry. Katie, if you want to take that chair over the
I would just say that first of all, we have a very well-functioning cooling system back here, or refrigerator or something, so, and please keep your voice up. Everybody has to hear you, including everybody in the back of the room. Probably the most important, or second most important person is the lady sitting back there taking all of this down, so just keep your voice up again. Go ahead, Mary Walden.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kendry, what is your role with it? Oh, no, she wasn't. Sorry. Did you swear the witness? Raise your right hand. Hopefully I'll remember that. And anybody that's going to testify, please hurry and show now. Mr. Kendry, what is your role with Little Creek Lodge?
I'm the clinical and executive director.
And what is the relationship of ARH to Little Creek Lodge?
ARH owns Little Creek.
And how long have you worked at Little Creek Lodge?
I was hired in July of 2015, so I've been there 8.5 years.
And would that be reasonable to assume that you didn't start off as clinical director and executive director?
No. I started
What
part-time.
roles have you had while you've been there?
So I was hired part-time as a clinical supervisor. I had a private practice as a therapist at that time. And over the next 2 years, took on more responsibilities and duties, came on board full-time and was elevated to clinical director. And most recently, in 2021, became the executive director.
And could you briefly describe what Little Creek is in terms of what type of treatment services are provided, how many beds you have there, and very simple and really fun?
Sure. So our current operation has 3 main programs. The first one, our oldest standing program, is a 16-bed inpatient all-male rehabilitation program. There's no detox there. It's residential in nature, though, so people are staying there overnight. Again, it's all male. It's small. There's only 16 people in treatment there at one time max. Our other program is our community-based outpatient program, which is also located in Lake Ariel, but at a separate address. That is co-ed, male and female. And we operate 3 different levels of care there. We offer what's called partial hospitalization treatment, which is day treatment. That operates from 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. We also offer a level of care called intensive outpatient, which is the next intensive level of care, which is typically about 3 hours a day, anywhere from 3 to 5 days a week. And then the least intensive outpatient level of care, which is considered general outpatient, which is anywhere from 1 to 3 hours per day, 1 day a week. Sometimes folks who are doing really well come once a month. The third program is our structured sober living program, which is on a third property, and that's an all-male licensed recovery house, and that's a 14-bed all-male sober living facility that's staffed.
The inpatient facility, about part of the facility, what's the average stay for someone who goes in for rehabilitation treatment?
At our inpatient program, the average length of stay is about 30 days.
And how does someone get into Little Creek Lodge?
To the inpatient program?
Mm-hmm.
So the inpatient process is someone calls in, they express interest, there's an exchange of information in terms of services we provide, what they're looking for. And then we'll go over gathering information from them to see what their needs are, to make sure that we would be an appropriate fit. There's a whole department that is trained to do that. That information gets gathered, medical information, mental health information, medication, family, employment information, insurance information, demographics. That information then gets sent to our clinical team and medical team on site. We review it and determine if that person would be a good fit, if there's someone that we can treat, if they need a different type of service that we can't offer, they would be referred elsewhere. If they are someone that we could potentially treat, and they meet our admission requirements, then we would approve them to be admitted.
Now, you talked about, I've asked you to emphasize on the inpatient.
Sure.
The proposed operation here in Waymar Borough, you describe services inpatient and you also describe a group of outpatient services. What would be the services at this location?
Inpatient.
Inpatient only. Right?
Inpatient only.
And we're proposing a condition that it be restricted to inpatient only. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the only way people would come there is if they had been screened and approved and are brought there to the facility. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I forgot to ask when I was asking you about your own role. Do you have any certifications?
Yes, so I have, I have a license through the state Board of Professional Counselors, social workers, marriage and family therapists. And then I also am a certified clinical supervisor through the Pennsylvania Certification Board.
And what role will you have at this proposed facility if the Borough Council brings approval?
I would be the executive director.
In addition to inpatient, you mentioned that a Little Creek Lodge does not have a detoxification unit. Is that being proposed for this location?
Yes, that's an inpatient level of care.
It is. And could you briefly describe what that is, and for example, how long people would typically be in?
Yeah, so
what's referred to as detox sometimes.
Yeah, so detox stands for medical detoxification. It's a medically managed level of care where people are provided acute medical oversight and services to be properly cared for as they withdraw off of certain substances that could cause them medical harm. So that's an inpatient level of care. They cannot leave and come and go. It's very acute, and that typical length of stay is less than the 30 days, but the idea is that it goes hand in hand with the residential services that follow.
Would it be correct that with regards to an inpatient admission, you would not accept an inpatient admission of someone who's still utilizing alcohol or drugs? In other words, they're still high or drunk or that type of thing.
We wouldn't want to bring someone in who's actively under the influence.
But they would potentially could go in, if they wanted to and volunteer to do so, go into the detox unit, sober up, if you will, and possibly go into inpatient?
Yes.
If they qualify, correct?
That's correct.
Are there times where you screen someone and say, this may not be a good fit for us because we may not be able to provide what they need? They may have, for example, a serious mental health problem in addition to a substance use.
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned that Little Creek Lodge is men only. Would this facility be for both men and women?
Yes, it would be color.
Will your facility that's proposed for Waymar Borough be able to give priority to Wayne County patients?
Wayne
to make
County
sure there's
residents?
available beds for them?
Absolutely.
In order to open up this proposed treatment center facility, would that require licensing by the state, and what department is that?
Yes, it would require licensing by the Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs.
And I assume that they have a full set of criteria. I'm going to ask Mr. Troy about that as well.
Oh, yeah.
In order for you to be able to be certified to open up. Am I
Yes,
correct?
a lengthy set.
What if there's a medical emergency that can't be treated in-house, if you will? Some kind of serious medical emergency. How would you, as the executive director, be telling staff how to handle it?
Well, the staff would be trained to handle it, so that I wouldn't need to be contacted first. That's how we operate now. But the protocol would be to call 911, to report to EMS what's going on, and to allow them to do their jobs. That often requires or involves someone being transported to a local emergency department.
And the nearest one would be Wayne Memorial, am I correct?
Yes.
your job as executive director, and even what you're doing currently with Little Creek Lodge, does that involve you handling all the business issues like insurance and payment and supplying and the expenses of operating the facility, the paying employees and all, or is there another member of the team, if you will, that deals with that?
No, that's a team. There's other folks. Pat really oversees all of that ourselves.
He's going to be the next witness after you.
Yes.
Back when we were here in March, you introduced two persons who went through Little Creek Lodge inpatient program and had a successful recovery. And am I correct that they have been employed by Little Creek to provide certain services?
Yes, so there was 3 gentlemen, 2 of which are now employed. Yes.
Yeah.
And they are employed by us.
And I assume that means that ARH, Little Creek, for example, but this other facility, does sometimes hire people who have had this addiction issue but have successfully gotten into recovery. Is that correct?
Yes, and sustained long-term recovery.
Yes. Yeah, obviously not a month after they get out or anything like that. And after a few years, they should be considered appropriate. So that's even a job opportunity for people who sometimes have a harder time getting a job because of activity. Right?
Sure.
And is one of those graduates I referred to as here tonight?
He is.
Okay. And that's Matt Dack, am I correct?
Yes.
He's going to testify a little later. I don't have any other questions of this witness.
And so we're going to go down the list, as I've indicated. This is the time for questions of the witness. J4, do you have questions of the witness, sir?
No, sir.
Donald Gary McDonough.
No, sir. No, sir.
Hang on a second now. Remember what I said. One person talks at a time. Do you have questions of the witness?
No.
No, Cheryl. How will Wayne County residents be prioritized?
I didn't hear you, ma'am. I'm sorry.
How will Wayne County residents be prioritized?
Oh, that's a question for the witness. Ask the witness.
So the way that it works now, and the way that I anticipate it working, is that when we have a facility with this many beds, there's always going to be a certain number of beds that are open. There's always a direct line between the Wayne County Drug and Alcohol Office and myself. Those calls can come directly into me, and those beds would be prioritized for the folks that they're sending in. So while our admissions team is working to gather the information to present to our clinical and medical team for approval, those beds would be held for a potential Wayne County resident until that decision is made.
What if then somebody from out of state or whatever is there because you have extra beds and you take them because you'll have to take?
So all of those decisions will go through me. We use a bed board model. There's not going to be anyone driving up and receiving services. Everything is done before someone is admitted to our program, and then they'd be transported to the facility by one of our employees.
Because there could be
Ma'am, please. Mary answered your question, and you'll be afforded the opportunity to ask your next one. Please go ahead, ma'am.
So that's how we would hold beds.
Okay, but is there a potential that, you're going to actually just hold beds waiting for something to happen that may not happen?
I would anticipate that we would always have at least a few open beds, so yes.
Any other questions from the Donna? Or going to call Goodnight.
No question.
Elise Van Aaron.
Anonymous. So you have a certain number of bed holds. How many beds do you anticipate having?
Between 70 and 80.
And do you have a medical director or physician on staff?
We do now at our current facility.
Would they also oversee this facility?
Not that medical director.
So you pick a different one?
Well, we would have, the operation would be big. It would be too big for one person to oversee both.
Gotcha. And then, so you would probably have a director just of that facility. Do you already have somebody on staff that you have in mind for that, or would you hire out somebody to oversee that? So the clinical director.
The clinical director or a medical director?
So we talked about the medical director, so I'm asking about the clinical
Okay, and what exactly is your question?
Do you have somebody already on staff that you would transition to that property, or would you be fulfilling this position?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Any other questions, ma'am?
No.
Mariette Miller?
Yes, clarification, you had said currently the plan is for inpatient beds only?
Inpatient meaning inpatient residential and detox.
Little Creek and other parts of your parent company provide outpatient services, correct? Is that a future?
Yes.
Is it your plan to offer that in the future to support your clients?
At this site?
Correct.
No.
No?
No.
Thank you.
Joshua and Catherine Miller?
Just looking for clarification, this planned facility is going to be co-ed. I believe at a prior information session, it was only males. Co-ed.
It was never my intention to communicate that it was male only. The new facility was always intended to be co-ed.
Okay,
so I must have miscommunicated that.
Edward Howell?
For the individuals who will be receiving treatment there, what will your policy be regarding visitors coming in and out of the building?
Do you mean family members?
Family members.
Any visitation would have to be approved ahead of time and scheduled. We don't have a written visitation policy yet. As it stands now, our visitation policy is between a couple hours on a Sunday, and everything is pre-approved. So it's not carte blanche. There has to be specific names. We have to vet people and verify that these are folks that are there for the right reasons. And when they're on site, they're meeting with the clinical team and the person in treatment.
And just for clarification, 60 to 70 beds at the facility, is that correct?
70 to 80.
70 to 80, okay. And will those individuals have the ability to come and go, for clarification, to come and go from the building?
No. Well, from the so the building to go outside,
yes,
or to leave the property?
To leave the property.
No.
In your years at Little Creek Lodge, what have been some of the biggest challenges for you as a facility in relating to the neighboring residences or businesses? What have been your biggest challenges with the community? Or perhaps you've had none?
No.
Let her answer the question, please.
My apologies.
That's a good question. I think the most disgruntled neighbor that we've had is someone who lives, you cannot see their property from our property. They live behind us, and certain GPSs will take people to the wrong address. And then they pull up the driveway and realize they're at the wrong place.
Have you had the occasion where individuals who are receiving treatment at your facility that they themselves or family members visiting have exhibited behavior that posed a threat to the local community or resulted in a call to law enforcement due to illegal activity?
No.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you.
Eugene Hedeker?
Is your facility in Lake area full?
Not currently. The inpatient program is not. The sober house is at 90% capacity.
And how many local are there, like from, not from Wayne County, but?
In our local facility, in our inpatient facility, % I would say. At our in our recovery house, Roughly 35 to 40% of the folks living in that house right now are local.
Thank you.
In regards to your facility, not giving the freedom for the folks to leave on their own, do you allow them to, with guidance from your staff, go to church services or anything in the area?
Yes.
You do? Okay. Do you also allow faith-based organizations to come in and assist and to work with your clients?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Drake.
Yes, I'd like to know, on rehab side, what medications you use and how is that done? Which is alcohol or drugs?
I feel that's a little bit,
Individual thing.
I feel it's a little bit outside the scope of what I can talk to or talk about because I'm not a medical professional. I also, that would be up to our medical director to design whatever detox protocols are utilized on site. I don't know what those are going to look like. There are industry standards that are used at most facilities that would be implemented.
Do you have medical staff there to provide?
Yes.
Are
What was that?
Nurses, doctors, not the person off the street to come in and do it?
Correct. And I'm a clinical person, not a medical person, so that's why I don't feel like I can speak specifically about that.
Other questions, ma'am?
No more questions.
Joseph Pavlovich.
Yes, I have a concern. Someone does something wrong, we go before a judge, before a court, and so many judges today are saying, oh, we're not going to put you in jail, we're going to put you in rehab. Do you get many residents that are court appointed?
No.
Denise and Vincent Johnson.
Hi. What assurance do we have that you're saying right now you're gonna do 70 to 80 inpatient units? What assurance do we have that you're not gonna build at a halfway house or change that once you are there? So what assurance do we have as neighbors that that whole facility is not gonna change? You might say one thing now, but then years later you might change and build and change the structure of your organization. So what kind of assurance do we have? Does it have to go back in front of the board or whatever, the council?
I think that's probably a better question for my boss to answer, the CEO. When he's up here in the hot seat.
Hang on. That's the end of your answer. That's fine. Next
Okay,
question,
so
ma'am.
there's no answer to that? There's no answer for us, yeah, okay.
If I might, we intend to address that, but with a different.
Okay, gotcha, thank you.
Wayne Maycheck.
Hi, could you please describe the security you plan to put in place for that facility?
I think that's another question that I would prefer my boss to answer since that's something he will oversee. Thanks.
Sarah Hine.
No questions.
Jennifer Roleski.
So I just want to clarify two things, please. My other questions may be for future witnesses. I believe early on we learned that you weren't going to accept folks who were under the influence. I may have missed the leading part of that, because nobody was going to be under the influence when they came in. And if I heard that correctly, then why would detox be needed if these folks aren't actively under the influence?
I thought he was asking about the rehab level of care compared to the detox level of care, which are two separate programs in the same building, but those folks are kept separate from one another.
And I also just want to clarify, so to your knowledge, in the 8.5 years you've been there, you're unaware of any time or situation where local or state police have been called to the existing facility for any reason? And if you recall a reason, what would that reason have been?
Well, let's just ask a compound question. So, have any police or law enforcement agencies been called to your facility
that what you're asking?
You had to have law enforcement there because something bad was happening and somebody had to do something about that bad. What was going on that folks had to be called in to intervene?
We had a stranger walk onto our property who was belligerent, and we called 911, so that person could be escorted out.
You have no further response, ma'am. Next question is from Leslie.
They're reserved for future release. Thank you.
Kevin Gallertani.
No, I have nothing.
Redirect.
Redirect. Katie, you mentioned that you were asked questions about how you would prioritize beds. You must answer that, but isn't it correct that the screening process as to whether you're going to take somebody in, that could be a factor that you would take into account when you're deciding whether to let somebody from, I don't know, New Jersey or somewhere else come in? Is that correct?
Yes.
And with regards to having a medical director who could supervise this facility, isn't that a requirement of the drug and alcohol department?
Yes.
Okay, so you would have to prove to you that you have medical director on staff.
Yes.
And you mentioned in describing Little Creek that in addition to the inpatient and in addition to the outpatient counseling, which is not going to happen here, you also have a recovery house. There's no recovery house going to be at this location, am I correct?
That's correct.
That's all I have.
In regard to those questions, and only in regard to those questions, does anybody have any recross questions, particularly in regard to those questions? Jace Ford.
Yes. Can you assure she will never have a halfway house type situation? You'll never want to build one in the future?
Here, one question at a time, please.
I can't speak to that. I'm the clinical and executive director who reports to other people.
Any questions, sir?
That's all.
Mr. and Mrs. McDonough?
No.
Mr. and Mrs. Goodnight?
How far do you plan on expanding of the Wayne County funeral facility? You're not gonna find out what people in Wayne County, you're gonna have to go out. And we're surrounded by other counties in New York State and New Jersey.
So the counties that we've been in touch with are the counties that Wayne County touches and the other northern tier Pennsylvania counties that are at a lack for resources as well.
Don't forget, Wayne County borders New York State.
Sir, questions, please.
So,
Are you gonna go into New York State?
I don't know. The counties that we've spoken to are all Pennsylvania counties.
How many miles out are you gonna go out?
I haven't measured it, I'm not sure. All the counties that we've spoken to either touch Wayne County or are one county away, or part of the same network that Wayne County is a part of. It's a rural county cooperative in Pennsylvania.
No more questions.
No question.
Harriet Miller?
I'm sorry, again, 70 beds for the facility, is that correct?
70 to 80 beds.
70 to 80. Staffing, if you're unable to find the appropriate number of certified, appropriate staff, what is your procedure or protocol when you don't have them?
If we can't find staff to serve that many clients,
Correct.
then we can't serve that many clients.
If you already have those clients and you have people calling off, not showing up, what is your procedure or protocol?
Bringing people in, you have to overstaff.
Do you know or have you started the procedure to find staff?
No.
Thank you.
Mrs. Miller,
No questions, sir.
Mr. Howell,
For clarification, did you or can you estimate approximately how many jobs would be created at this facility to accommodate the needs?
The numbers that we looked at were an estimate of at least 50 to 60 jobs to start, to open the facility.
Thank you.
Mr. Hedeker,
What you're starting at, you may expand down the road.
Can you answer that now?
I don't understand the question.
What you're originally planning to do there, down the road, you may expand,
There is no plan to expand.
but it could.
There is no plan to expand.
Anything else, sir? Mr. Pastor Giordano,
No question?
Linda Gregg,
Yes, this is overseen by the Pennsylvania Department of Health.
The Pennsylvania Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs, it's called DDAP for short, DDAP, it's an acronym. They're our licensing body in the state.
Pavlovich,
For the record, this property was never a nursing home. It was an assisted living both times, Malametta, where the second owner was.
here, sir, questions, please?
That's why I'm bringing it up. Under the assisted living, they were allowed to come and go. It's an assisted living, it wasn't a nursing home. Are your people going to be like assisted living where they can come and go? Or like a nursing home where you're confined in the building, the doors are locked and you can't leave?
We're not permitted, as per our licensing standards, to keep people locked indoors. They have to be able to leave the building in case of an emergency. But they can't come and go into the community.
This property, will this property be debt free or no?
I didn't understand that question, so can you repeat it?
I canceled it, I'm not going to do it.
Thank you. Mr. Maycheck,
No questions.
Hine,
No questions.
Mr. Robleski,
A follow-up to the former question, so if someone does go outside, if they're allowed to go outside the facility, what prevents them from just keep walking? Or will we, sorry, I'll answer.
Well, they will always be attended by staff. And I think Pat could probably speak to some of the ideas that we've had about security in a more detailed way than I can.
Scalpani, Mr. and Ms. Scalpani,
No, I have none.
thank you. All right, questions from the panel or from the board?
You forgot me.
I didn't hear you.
You forgot me. I do have a question.
I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. If you can't fill up your facility now, how do you expect to, I know there's a lot of need, but how do you expect to fill up 89 beds or 80 beds?
So the insurances that we would be contracted with would be more local insurances and a different, we would be expanding the payers that we're contracted with. And we would also be serving a co-ed demographic.
Okay. My other question, is the facility going to be fenced in? Because, and I know this is my question, but I have a 6-year-old who lives right next to it, and gets the bus right next to it. So are we going to have some kind of barrier?
Those types of things have been discussed, and we're more than willing to continue discussing those with you guys as partners in the community.
Thank you.
I believe now with that error, I picked everybody up on cross-examination. Did I miss anybody? Okay. Questions from council? You want to start, Glenn?
accommodations, education, training. Some of them will be more entry level. So yes, some will be part-time, some will be full-time. We offer competitive wages now, and we plan to continue to do that.
Come right down the list, would you please?
No question?
Darren, how close is the closest home residence to your Lake Area facility?
From the actual facility, from the edge of the property.
To the facility itself.
I don't know the exact answer to that. I would guess 300 yards.
Thank you.
Craig Spiewak. So your facility isn't full in Lake Area. Why do you keep saying that you need another facility here if the place in Lake Area isn't full?
We've been approached because there's a demand for folks that we can't serve at our current facility to have treatment available to them.
And why can't you serve?
Because they have a different type of insurance or they're women.
Thank you.
No questions?
What type of insurances will you accept? Private, Medicare?
Private, state funded, Medicaid. I don't know what the plan is with Medicare.
Thank you.
Are there any questions that you would like to pose, Attorney Walton, based upon the questions from council?
No.
Any of the interveners, do you have any questions? Any questions specifically in regard to the questions just posed by council members?
I wanted to know, getting back to the security part of it, I can see the facility from our house, and we have grandchildren and at my house. And I just wanted to know what the security would be, if there would be anybody running around. I had somebody on my porch last fall, so I know what the incident is. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, I had the state troopers on my porch.
This is a question, ma'am. That's what you have to ask a question. Can you answer that question, ma'am?
We're committed to working with the community to come up with a plan for security that people feel comfortable with.
Any other questions, but only questions in regard to the questions that were just elicited by council members? Hearing none. Mr. Walker, next witness.
You can step down, but you can go back to the
Now, before we proceed, we need a break, ma'am? Well, we're gonna recess for about 5 minutes. we're not gonna finish tonight. So we'll do as much as we can. We're gonna push on to about 9:30. The next night that we're gonna try to do this, I believe, so we don't have to advertise, we're gonna announce it tonight. It's up to council. We're talking Tuesday or Wednesday, the 15th through 16th of May. Attorney Waldron can't make it next week, he has a prior commitment, but does anybody have any preference, 15th through 16th?
Wednesday or Thursday, right?
Correct.
Wednesday or Thursday.
We meet Tuesday night, the 14th.
That'll be fine. Yes, Thursday.
Anybody have any problem?
Oh, 16.
Wednesday is
Thursday.
probably the third.
Thursday the 16th.
Okay. For any of the interveners, we'll announce tonight, and I'm announcing preliminarily now, that the continuation of this hearing will take place at 5:30.
No, let's start earlier.
Start earlier.
5:30 p.m. Go ahead, Ms. Hess.
It's 5:30.
Yeah.
5:30, Mrs. Mountford.
Thursday is
Thursday the 16th.
I'll check with Barbie and let her know.
So, again, announce it completely for the record. Yes, please.
Okay, so following tonight's adjournment at 9:30, we will meet Thursday, May 16th at 5:30 at the same location to continue proceedings.
Waldron, call your next witness, please.
Hi, Curly, you can stand if you can be sworn in.
Is he been sworn?
Mr. Curley, what is your role as the ARA?
I'm the Chief Executive Officer.
And what does that generally entail, and what properties do you manage, or what facilities do you manage?
The job entails oversight of every operational aspect of our businesses. We're currently operating in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Florida. And the job entails oversight of every aspect of all of those businesses.
And how long has ARA been involved with owning Little Creek lot here in Lincoln?
I think it was December 31st, 2020, I think is when we got it in 2020.
Now, some of this has been covered by Katie, but just to clarify, approximately how many beds do you plan on having, and how many of those would be for inpatient rehabilitation treatment versus detox?
Sure, so approximately 70 to 80 total beds, of which I would estimate between 12 and 16 would be detoxification beds, and the remainder would be used for inpatient residential rehabilitation.
And there will be accommodation for both men and women?
Correct, men and women.
And will there be any outpatient services at this location?
No.
And is that something that, just to clarify some questions that were asked earlier, do you understand that if the Borough Council approved this, and we proposed, or they even imposed conditions, and one of those conditions was inpatient only, that you cannot switch over to any other operation unless and until you would come back to the borough, have a public hearing and get approval? Do you understand that?
I do.
And ARH has agreed to be bound by that restriction, correct?
Yes.
What types of payment would you accept for this facility in terms of how insurances are involved or government funding?
Sure. And this will likely answer some other questions that were previously asked too. Currently, we only really accept commercial insurance for our current inpatient operation. So, employer-funded health insurance or through the marketplace, what have you. The demand in the area that we've been approached with and have seen widely is a need for people who are either underinsured or who are insured through Medicaid, local or state funded. type of insurance. There's limited services for that. At this location, I would anticipate accepting commercial insurance, Medicaid, not Medicare. That's a different type of license that this building won't ever meet. So commercial insurance, Medicaid, cash, things like that.
And you've heard the proposal that, or the condition that Wayne County residents will be given priority in terms of making sure there's available beds for them.
Yes, and there's relatively simple functions within our department, some of which Katie had spoken on, some of which in our admissions kind of policy. That would be kind of easy to make that happen. So it's a lot easier than what it might meet the eye.
And in terms of looking into this project and getting involved, ARH getting involved, did you interact with Wayne County? Do they support this idea?
I sure hope so.
Yes. Testimony.
Yes, they do.
And would it be correct to assume that one of the reasons is because you are willing to open up what kind of payments you can receive in terms of the people that can be served?
Yes, and that's not something that we really ever entertained in our current operation. That was not what the goal was when we acquired the business either. So that this would be not exclusively for that purpose, but certainly was an influence of what the community needs.
Now, Katie mentioned she got into some of your good questions were asked.
Sure.
She referred to DDAP. That's the State Department, which I believe was created in 2012, just to deal with drug and alcohol programs. Is that correct?
I don't know about the year, but yes, everything else, yes.
And they would license this facility, right? In fact, both aspects of the facility.
In order for us to operate in any capacity with a patient, a singular patient, yes. We can't take a patient before we have a DDAP license.
And does DDAP do inspections?
Annually.
Okay. And do they review records? Do you have to submit information to them?
Annually and at any given point that they request that.
And if you could get into a little bit about what type of security measures you would take, both to keep track of the patients who are there inpatient-wise or detox, that's what patients do, but also to make sure people aren't coming into the building as well.
Sure.
Can you describe the security measures?
Sure. So a lot of this is still kind of preliminary, and as Katie indicated, willing to work with everybody as necessary, but the general idea is a camera system throughout the building at every door. Our doors can lock from the exterior, so from an interior they can still open. We've talked about things like a fence. The biggest piece of it is simply our staffing. The staff that are on site, what we call behavioral health technicians, that staff is almost solely responsible for putting eyeballs on every single patient, which is called rounds. And that's an order from a doctor, just like a medication would be. Similar to that in a hospital, where nurses or staff at a hospital will do rounds on patients that are in the rooms. Same thing will take place here. It's all documented as well. So there's a myriad of things that we would do to ensure people are where they're supposed to be within the building. From the exterior, as Katie said, all visitation is scheduled. All admissions are scheduled. There's no walk-ups that would take place. There's not drive-ins that would take place. Everything would be scheduled. If there's somebody that would come to the door in that circumstance, they would be directed to our admissions department for admission. As far as keeping people out, it would be a matter of the security system and the staff being trained on understanding who and what is supposed to be there and when.
And I assume that particularly keeping eyes on, if you will, and going around is particularly important at nighttime. There's not as many services being provided, correct?
Certainly, yeah. The overnight staff, between nurses that'll be there 24/7 as well as behavioral health technicians, the idea is that hopefully everybody's asleep during normal sleeping hours, but that might be wishful thinking at points in time. But at nighttime it would be the job of the overnight tech is almost entirely to kind of observe and report, making sure people are where they're supposed to be.
And what if, because it's been asked, what if somebody just wants to walk away?
So the first thing when it comes to that is the staff being trained in understanding how to de-escalate somebody. It's not uncommon for somebody who's coming off of drugs and alcohol to want to leave a facility. Normally that reason is not a good one. It does happen. Unfortunately it happens. It would make life for us a lot easier if it didn't. The first step would be the staff being trained in what we would call an AMA LOCK, or AMA protocol. AMA stands for Against Medical Advice. So if there's a patient who wants to leave for whatever reason, there's a process in which that's followed. Everything from speaking with different levels or layers of staff, our staff member reaching out to their loved ones to try to assist them to set up kind of a barrier for them to leave. Make it as difficult as possible for somebody to leave. Without locking them in the door, helping them and supporting them to make the right decision and staying in treatment.
When somebody is admitted for inpatient, either type of treatment, do they have to surrender their cell phone?
Our policy would state that, yes, that people cannot have their phones while they are with us.
So quite frankly, walking out would be somewhat difficult if they don't have a phone or even a wallet. Obviously, you're not going to keep those things, but you don't have to hand them over to them if they're going against medical advice. Right?
Yeah, it's always a tricky spot to be when it's like that, because if there's somebody who's going to leave, it always puts us in a tough spot. Luckily, we've done a good job of keeping people in those types of circumstances and at minimum setting up a safe discharge for them. Rarely does somebody walk, and I can speak to this on any of our operations, rarely does somebody just walk down the road away from where they're going. So not only do we hold phones, but also things like suitcases or other things that would, again, I don't want to sound inhumane to some effect, but make it hard for somebody to make a bad decision, right? So all of those things are taken into consideration.
And if they don't have somebody who can come and pick them up because they've decided they definitely don't want to be there, maybe they even want to go somewhere else. Would you provide transportation if they don't have somebody readily available to come?
Yeah, within reason. If there's somebody who's adamant of leaving and their options are walk down the road, or they say, hey, I'll go to facility X or to provider Y, or we'll work with them and or family and or other provider to make sure that they get there as opposed to walk.
And with regards to employment, a little bit of that was touched upon with the last question. How many people do you expect to employ if you're fully operational and look like you can fill out most, maybe not all, but most of the beds? At a full capacity or close to full capacity, I would anticipate between 70 and 80, maybe even closer to 90 employees. And I'm basing that off of some of the regulations of BDAP, as far as they kind of tell us how many people are to serve a certain number of patients, if you will. And also basing that off of our experience with comparable facilities outside of Pennsylvania. And what kind of levels of employment in terms of skills versus entry level educated graduate?
Sure.
What kind of people would you be hiring, or what kind of roles would you be hiring?
Kind of a wide net of people. Obviously there are some positions that require a license, call that a nurse, call that a RN, LPN, licensed therapist, a marriage and family counselor, things like that. There are some that require certain college degrees. And then there are some positions that require nothing. Kind of a basic, either a GED or high school diploma. And I know we had touched on hiring people who are in recovery as well, maybe graduates of the program. It's something that I feel strongly about within reason. There's a protocol or policy in place for that in hiring people who graduate our program.
Some of them even go and get their certification for addiction counseling.
They do.
Which the state regulates as well. Right? And I think it's covered the fact that the state DDAP actually would license this facility, and that would be relative to the DDAP as well as the inpatient, correct?
The entire entity, yeah.
Are you proposing any additions to the former Mallard Meadows building?
As far as external construction, no.
Renovations inside, correct?
Inside, and maybe things like landscaping, or I know a fence was mentioned, things like that we've talked about, but no decisions were made, but there's no need to make any exterior additions.
And if, since as you said, you've developed any ideas for security and all, would ARH be willing to provide, if this is an approval with the condition that, for example, we would submit a security plan for their review, just to be aware of it, if they have any ideas?
Sure.
Obviously reasonable approval.
Sure, and the DDAP and frankly other licensing bodies do the same thing, so that's kind of right in the wheelhouse.
And would you be, would ARH be entering into memorandum of understanding, say, with the hospital provider for medical emergencies like Wayne Memorial, or even possibly a backup over in the Scranton area or something like that?
Yeah, it's not uncommon for places like this to have an MOU with a hospital or some higher level of care, call it inpatient psychiatric treatment, things like that. Not uncommon for there to be documents that are shared or exchanged amongst those entities. I would anticipate this being the same way.
I have no other questions.
Thanks. Cross-examination time. Mr. Spore?
Yes, the question. You talk about having two patients that are completely unreasonable and want to walk out the door in the middle of the night. We had the same conversation here about a month ago at the information workshop. If I remember correctly, you told me last year you had two people walk out the door completely unreasonable. Is that correct?
I would have to check with Katie specific for Little Creek Lodge. If that was what was said at the last informational session, I would believe that to be true.
Okay. So can we therefore assume that since this facility is approximately 5 times the size, that 10 people will walk out the door in the course of the next year completely unreasonable, don't want to help anymore?
I don't know if it would work proportionate like that. I don't think that there's any way to forecast that successfully. That's the best way I can. I don't know how to forecast that. I don't know that it would work proportionate like that.
The only other question I have is, you've told us several times the county has approached you on this project. You'd really like to purchase the property, operate the facility because there's the need there. Has the county offered you any preferential tax status when you purchased this property for property taxes?
No. Just to be clear, they didn't. The county in no way came to us saying we want you to buy this building. It came through the department of where Jeff Zarichek is, I forget the specific name, I call it the Wayne County SCA or Wayne County SCA, about a need for inpatient services because Wayne County is losing people that are unwilling to go to further away places. So it wasn't the Wayne County Commission that approached Little Creek in this capacity. It was a relationship with the Wayne County SCA that's existed because we work with them at our outpatient clinic currently. And there are times even where our patients that are at outpatient level of care relapse and need a higher level of care, and the Wayne County SCA has a hard time placing them. So that's kind of where the idea was birthed. It wasn't from like the county commission. There certainly was no tax implication that was discussed.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Thanks. McDonough's?
How many annual inspections found the facility in compliance in the last 5 years?
Facility, ma'am.
The one that's currently run in Hamlin.
That's the Hamlin one?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I think the best way I can answer that is we've remained in compliance for the entirety of the time that we've been operational. So when a group like DDAP were to come out to do an annual inspection or a random site visit, if there are things that they find to be out of compliance, we have the opportunity to correct it so long as it's not severe. If there's something severe in nature or something that's incredibly high risk, they have the ability to shut us down immediately, say this is too high risk for you to continue on this way. That has not happened. As far as a matter of maintaining compliance, DDAP has a process in which if they find some deficiency, say in a particular way in which we're documenting something, they say, hey, this is not in compliance, you need to fix it and prove to us that you can fix it. And we can put together what's called a corrective action plan and submit that to DDAP, in which they will kind of re-verify, hey, they've made a change, they've done better. So we've remained in compliance for the entirety of the time that we've been in existence. There hasn't even been a time close to them saying something so severe that you must, stop services immediately.
In Florida, what is the name of the facility, and would you know if they were not currently operating?
We're not currently operating a facility in Florida. Our corporate office is in Florida, so the way I like to describe that is like our shared services operate in Florida, so things like our admissions department, our billing department, accounting, some human resource functions, things like that operate out of our office in Florida.
In regards to the security or the alarms, if that they can open it on the way out, well, when the door is pushed open, will there be any kind of alarm system? So just in case somebody turned around and, you know, somebody slipped out, really, because I mean, it's not 100% that every minute of every hour would there be an alarm system on the door, so then somebody would be immediately alerted.
Yeah, so there's functions that we have relating this to a comparable operation in West Virginia, for instance. Our doors have alarms both on the doors, and they alert the nursing station when somebody opens the door, specific to an exterior door.
Okay.
Anything else, ma'am?
That's it.
Mrs. Goodnight?
Yes, I would like to know how you feel you'd be able to get 50 or above employees when every facility around here is understaffed.
So the competition that I think would exist within what we would do would not, like within our operation, would not be typical in that of, to call it this way, like fighting over customers, if you will. I think the battle exists in staffing more than it does the people that need help. To be honest, we've dealt with the same exact thing in very rural areas of West Virginia. It's taking things like finding recruiters or headhunters, using different staffing websites, things like Indeed or Monster, ultimately coming up with a better benefit package or just simply paying people more, which fortunately or unfortunately we've been successful with, where we've successfully staffed 2 different 80-bed facilities in rural areas of West Virginia by those methods. And I anticipate doing the same thing here. Luckily, we're in a place here in northeastern PA where there are other providers that exist. And I think that there are staff members within those providers that are unhappy, that frankly, I think we could do a better job of being an employer. Ultimately, a lot of it comes down to a benefit package, comes down to money, comes down to, I think, just about anything else that a person would look for in a job. But I think you're spot on in the sense that that would be more or less the competition that would exist.
How many clients would you have per employee?
So that's a tough question to answer specifically. I can answer it this way, and hopefully this works. Our census, our active census of clients, would be determined by the number of employees that we have, right? So we will never put ourselves in a position where we do not have appropriate staffing to manage the number of patients that we have, right? So it's not like, oh no, we have 70 patients here, we need to go hire 10 people to support the 70. We'll have had the 10 people ahead of time.
I'm sorry.
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm from Jersey, I just talked too fast. I don't know. So the idea is the census would demand what the staffing requirements would be, right? So we would have the staff ahead of time before expanding the census number, right? So we will likely never be in a spot where we're going to be understaffed based on the number of patients that we have. And also the Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs gives certain models to, you need 1 therapist per X amount of clients, things like that, right? There's ratios. So obviously we would follow those as well.
Okay, because even the daycares, I mean, when he said daycare, and you can only have X amount of children to each employee.
A similar concept, a similar concept exists in this world. It's just hard to answer specifically because there's different types of employees. There's medical professionals, there's clinical professionals, there's technician type professionals. So there are ratios within DDAP that kind of tell us how to operate. We can make that more strict if we'd like, right? But the minimum guideline is set by the state.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Van Anen?
Yeah.
How'd I do?
You're getting close. So, how is the detox separated from the inpatient?
Sure. So the way that the the rooms. There's a section of the building that would make the most sense to be a detox. I would call it a wing, if you will, where the wing still has access to things like what we would forecast as like the dining area or the nursing station. And it kind of, the way that the building sits naturally, it bodes well to separating that particular population based on the way that the rooms are laid out within the building.
And then just to clarify something that was brought up earlier, somebody that is in withdrawal isn't technically under the influence currently. So you could be in withdrawal, be in detox without being under the influence. Is that correct?
The best way I would be able to answer that would be to say there could be somebody who is in benzodiazepine withdrawal but intoxicated by opiates, right? So there could be a combination there that would exist. Ultimately, I think with the way that the answer that I think you're looking for here is we would be able to handle just about all of that with somebody in our door. So the idea is we can't take somebody who comes in and blows a breathalyzer of, like in West Virginia right now, it's anything over 0.2, we have to refer to the hospital, right? So like that's somebody who's going and getting cleared at the hospital before coming back to us that's on a breathalyzer. And people are evaluated immediately upon admission with things like drug tests, urine drug screen as well as breathalyzer. So there is a difference between the intoxication and the withdrawal. There are circumstances in which somebody could be intoxicated and we are waiting for them to not be intoxicated anymore to then go into withdrawal, in which case we would treat them. But again, all of it comes down to the evaluation of the patient when they're there and making appropriate referrals as needed.
So I'm going to ask another security question. You said there would be alarms, locks from exterior so nobody could get in. On a normal basis, would clients be allowed out unaccompanied?
No.
Okay, so part of being the property that's almost directly adjacent to this property, one of our main concerns is security, particularly people staying away from our property. So you have said in the past that you're open to working with the adjacent neighbors, so that's square across both sides. Are you still willing to work with us specifically?
Yeah.
And how would we go about doing that if we ever came up to have a problem?
I'd be happy to share my information or Katie's information or other, staff. There's also, I think, there would be something wise that if the neighboring people, right, like right next door or like right in that proximity, to be able to have a direct line to one of us would be a really important thing. We don't want anybody to be in any way inconvenienced by this or to experience something that they wouldn't want, certainly on their property. And as far as like kind of the build-up and strategizing the way in which we put together a security plan, I'm happy to communicate, with the neighbors in doing so.
That's it. Thank you.
Miller?
Seeking information or clarification on the need for Wayne County. We've talked about you have beds available, but what exactly is the need? It was mentioned that something along the lines of people are not willing to travel very far, and so they're staying at home, and sometimes it's not a good result. So what are we talking about? How many people in Wayne County are candidates for this?
Any number I would give you would be a sheer guess. However, if it's okay, I would refer it to Jeff to answer that question when it's his turn to be in the hot seat. I'm not the one that would have the data to answer your question effectively. Anything I would give you would be a guess.
Okay, fair enough. So, of course, you need to generate income.
Yes.
So, not knowing the Wayne County number, is the bulk of your income going to come from outside resources, outside individuals?
the way that we've forecasted kind of the financials of this is something that it took me a while to understand the lay of the land of how Medicaid in this area works. First and foremost, it's different than other areas. The process of the Medicaid is one where what happens in Wayne County matches, I think, 9 other counties very close to us, or along neighboring counties. That, don't quote me on that number, it's something approximately 9. So the concept was, we know how much it would cost to operate this within reason. We understand how much we would be paid on a per person basis within reason, and drawing it out from there, right? So it's not just Wayne County, but it's Wayne County first, and then the surrounding areas as well, that have the same function from a Medicaid standpoint as Wayne County does.
And you wouldn't have a ratio or proportion for that, outside versus Wayne?
Right now, no, but I'm happy to get that and share it with however we can do that.
Thank you.
Well,
Mrs. Miller?
No questions.
Mr. Howell?
If I can ask you to estimate, sir, what percentage of the people receiving treatment in an inpatient facility such as the one that you propose are there because they want to be, because they choose to receive that treatment on their own? What percentage?
My gut instinct wants to tell you 100% because we're a voluntary facility, right? Like we are people do have the ability to leave. It's against our policy for somebody to come and go to, say, the grocery store, what have you, but it's not uncommon, and I could speak personally and professionally, it's not uncommon for when somebody first arrives in rehab to not want to be there. It's uncomfortable. It's challenging. Normally, it's based on the culture of the facility or the program as to how quickly that feeling goes away. So to answer your question in a very literal sense, 100% of the people that are there want to be there. It's a voluntary place. If they wanted to leave, they can.
And can you describe, in your experience working in this field, what are some of the most dangerous behaviors commonly exhibited by those receiving treatment in an inpatient facility?
Yes, great question. I can answer it probably in 2 ways. One of which is from a medical standpoint, just a general medical complication standpoint is a challenge, right? That's the highest risk. We're not running CT scans and MRIs and X-rays on everybody that walks through the door. So there are things happening within the body as people are coming off of drugs and alcohol that pose a risk. So there's that aspect of it that I would say from a medical standpoint is extremely risky. From more of a behavioral standpoint, we were talking about it today. The type of person that is most challenging for us to treat is somebody who we know is not appropriate for our level of care, yet not sick enough to be involuntarily admitted in a psychiatric facility, right? So for instance, somebody who exhibits signs of schizophrenia, yet does not exhibit signs of imminent danger to themselves. So verbalizing suicidality or homicidality, things like that. The trickiest behavioral people are the ones that are to put it broadly, too sick for us to help, but not sick enough for the next level to help, if that makes sense.
Thank you. On how many occasions at Little Creek Lodge have staff or other individuals receiving treatment sustained bodily harm by people receiving treatment?
I don't think any. As far as like violence or aggressiveness from a patient to a staff?
Yes.
I don't think any.
Thank you. And my final question for you, sir, and again, this is simply your opinion based on your experience in the field in which you work. In your opinion, why does society at large view persons battling addiction as dangerous criminals?
Good question. I'm glad this is an opinion. I think because it's different, it's changing. It's something that, and I can speak personally, I'm a person in recovery. there's reasons for people to view it that way, right? Like, but that's, I think, almost an undereducated way of viewing something. And I'm the last person to tell somebody to go read a book or talk to somebody about something. Frankly, it's not my concern what you believe or what you don't believe. But from my perspective, it's a matter of undereducation. It's a real, true problem. And it's not a choice. Right? Like, I'm an intelligent person, and I can speak to the lack of logic that is applied to addiction. There is no logic to addiction. If there was, the smart people would stop using drugs and alcohol, and the dumb people would die or be in prison, and that's not the way that it is.
So for clarification, this is not a prison. This is a treatment center, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Of course. Good question.
Hedeker, or I'm sorry, Mr. Hedeker.
Your policy states you cannot hold anyone there. Anyone or everyone could leave and walk down the street.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
No Morana.
In your previous facilities, have you found that once they have been in existence for a while, that the community accepts them, or there's continued issue with your presence?
Probably one of my most proud things to say is that the community we have become part of the community in every place that we've operated. And that's heartfelt, right? Like, it's a scary thing, it's an unfortunate thing that this happens, but at all of our other locations, we have become something that has been widely accepted and appreciated in the community, right? Like, I can speak specific to a place like here in Hamlin or in West Virginia. Not to say that there's such a thing as a household name of a rehab. That's not something that should exist. But by and large, the community not only accepts and appreciates, but I think has a true level of gratitude for the work that we do. That's something I'm proud of. That makes me feel good.
No other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Greg.
Well, being next door neighbor of the facility that's there, if someone wanted to go out a window, there's no security. Like you said, the back door has an alarm, nurse's station has an alarm. However, they open up the window because it's a little bit too warm in the room, and it's most of the window sills aren't any higher than your table.
Ma'am, question please.
How can you say security is being reached when those windows are easily open and they can go out the window?
I don't know exactly how to answer that. I can tell you that it's abnormal for a person to randomly up and leave, especially when people know that they can walk out the front door. Why would they jump out the window? I don't mean to be silly when I say that, and I mean no disrespect by that response. That's just, I think, the best way I can respond to that. We can't lock the windows, right? I'd imagine that there's some type of fire code. It's probably the right place to ask that. But where the windows have to be able to be a means of egress for people to get out of the building. And short of putting alarms on windows, which I don't think is reasonable, it's a matter of our staff doing rounds appropriately and furthermore understanding where each patient is as far as their motivation to want to leave.
I guess what I'm getting at is, if somebody wants alcohol bad enough, if they want the drugs bad enough, they're going to get them.
That's right.
They're not going to go to the back door and punch in code and have somebody bring their little baggies of goodies. They're going to open their window and say,
Ma'am, please confine yourself to questions, please.
no, I've said my part.
Mr. Pavlovich.
I asked a question earlier about people leaving, and we were told that no, they can't leave the building, and now you're saying if they want to be there, they can just go to the front door and they're gone. So, can they leave or can't they leave?
So it's a voluntary facility. As far as our policy reads, people are not allowed to just come and go as they please. Right, so it's part of our rules to participate in our program. You cannot just come and go as you please. However, from a voluntary or involuntary standpoint, the program, the facility would be a voluntary facility. Meaning that somebody does have the ability to lean against medical advice and, in essence, walk out the front door, yet there's a whole lot of processes that take place before that. Right, that is the absolute last resort, is for somebody to walk out the door. Even meaning us find a safe place for them that we can drive them to, as opposed to them walking out the front door.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Mrs. Johnson?
Why doesn't Little Creek accept Medicaid? Is there a reason?
Good question, yes. The way that the program was developed years ago by Andy and Barb Pace is the way that the program still operates, with things that are not in line with what is okay in the eyes of Medicaid. We have particular functions of the program that we would have to stop doing at Little Creek Lodge in order to accept Medicaid, and that's not something we're willing to do.
Okay. My other question is, how do you prevent people and visitors coming into your facility and bringing in drugs? Do you do any kind of screening when visitors come into the facility? I'm just curious.
Sure, a good question. So as Katie mentioned, all visitation by family is something that will be vetted by staff first. First and foremost, the staff will communicate with this person or family that is going to come. When they walk in the door, there's a basic function of do you have anything on you, any weapons or drugs that you shouldn't have? If you do, get out of here. And also, most times, I can't speak to all, but most times, any type of family visit is supervised by staff as well. So that's another factor of securing that area too.
And how many people leave your facility without AMA?
A small number, a small percentage. Especially at Little Creek Lodge, we do a very good job of keeping people even when they might want to make a poor decision and leave. So I don't have the statistics. They're obviously readily available, but I would say a very small percentage of those people. I'm happy to get that info and share it also.
Thank you.
Maycheck?
You said before that when you admit someone, everything is taken from them, like as cell phones and all that stuff, but are they like put into a prison, not prison, but a hospital gown or clothing, something like that?
Sure. So when people first get in, the idea here, again, this is preliminary, but the way that I would design this thing is that for the first couple hours when somebody is there, they would be in scrubs. The reason being is that we're washing their clothes. That's a way of making sure that people aren't bringing in something that they're not supposed to be bringing in. It's also done with our nurses and our tech staff do things like a skin assessment. The nurses on the nursing assessment go over things to evaluate the entirety of the human to make sure that they're as healthy as they can be, or for us to be aware of what needs to, how we can best help them. So when they first come in, we take their items, their personal belongings. Every single item is searched. Everything is logged. We keep personal belongings locked away. Things like wallets, cell phones, money, things like that is locked away. Patient is changed into scrubs for the first couple hours while we're washing the clothes that they brought with them and the clothes that they're going to inevitably bring with them into the room. After a couple hours, they get changed back into the regular clothes.
So what happens while they're in the scrubs and they decide, this isn't for me, I'm leaving? It seems at that point they're very desperate, they want to get out, and they're going to have to find someplace to, get something back into their street clothes, or get money, or get a car, something like that. And in my opinion, I think that endangers our neighborhood. What do you think?
It's incredibly rare for somebody to up and leave at that point. It normally doesn't, if there's somebody who's going to leave, it normally doesn't happen until a week to 10 days into it. Because for the first period of time, they're likely being medicated. They're being treated for withdrawal symptoms. So they don't feel sick, right? So that's kind of the idea. Incredibly rare that there will be somebody who will up and leave in scrubs, just walk down the street without any of their stuff. I don't think that that's ever happened. In any of the places that I've been.
It's rare, but I mean, so is an eclipse. I mean, these things happen.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Thank you for your.
Of course.
Ms. Hine?
In any of your facilities, do you have strict, just security? A security guard?
By job title, no. However, on job description of a different job title, securing the premises and the staff and then the patients therein is included on the job title. Right, so by title, we don't have security guards, if you will. That's kind of viewed as abrasive or aggressive, and we don't need to do that to still accomplish the same task of securing the property and making sure people are safe.
I was wondering if that had a negative effect to.
It could. It's just not a phrase that I've ever used in any of the work that I've done. It's kind of number one job description of a behavioral health tech is to observe and report, secure the program and the patients there.
It sounds like you are willing to work with the community on coming up with a proposed security plan. My question is, will that plan be available for the borough to review and make sure that they're comfortable with the proposal before any, approval is granted to move forward?
That's not up to me. I'm not opposed to that type of condition being applied here, but that's up to the council.
Thank you. Will inpatients be permitted to smoke cigarettes?
Yes.
Will they do that inside or outside?
Outside only, away from the building.
Will they be accompanied by a staff member every time they have a cigarette?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good question.
I know it's not your plan now, but do you foresee ever in the future accepting folks who are court ordered?
We can do something like that. Do we intend on having a contract with the Department of Corrections? No. The way that we kind of view that is there's no difference between a person that's court ordered to treatment than somebody who is not court ordered to treatment. Can we accept somebody like that? Yes. Do we have a business plan built around that model? No. There are programs that have their businesses built around that type of model. That's not anywhere near what we're interested in doing. But in essence, we could accept somebody in a circumstance like that.
So I think in two instances, like tonight and the informational session that we had, I swear I heard that there was not going to be any consideration of court order. So we might dive into this. I guess we were going to dive into that. Like I was under the impression that there wasn't going to be anybody court ordered, because that to me doesn't say voluntary. If I'm court ordered to do something, it means someone's making me do that. The court is ordering me to do that, which negates being voluntary. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
We can. I can give an example as well. Just because somebody is court ordered does not mean they are involuntary in the eyes of us. They can walk out the door. They walk out the door, we have a responsibility to call the proper people to make sure that, that they're aware that this person left. That does not make our facility involuntary.
Okay, I'm going to keep asking questions because I hear rumbles and I just want to touch on them.
Sure.
Would it be a true statement to say that you can and you would consider a court-ordered patient who is in a facility that isn't locked and they could rarely walk out? And it's a possibility.
Would I say that's a possibility? Yes. Normally, if somebody is court ordered to treatment, they're not getting court ordered to a place like this. That's I probably should have said that up front. Normally people who are court ordered are not court ordered to a place like this.
My last question with its follow-up. Can you please remind us how long you've been associated to the facility in Lake area?
Since December 31st, 2020.
Okay.
Is when we
your
applied.
time there, or in anything that's been shared with you, that may have happened prior to you being there, are you aware of any situations where local or state law enforcement or authorities have had to visit that facility for any reason other than the reason that was cited earlier?
Not that I can recall.
I'm done. Thank you.
Galpani? Mr. Galpani?
No.
No question?
No.
Redirect? No. Question from council from the far end?
John Thorpe, veterans, what percentage use your facility?
Do we have that are veterans?
Yeah.
Tough thing to answer for me off there. I can tell you that we intend on accepting TRICARE at this other facility. It's something that I feel strong about personally.
Right.
To be able to give you a percentage right now of Little Creek, any number I give you will be yes, happy to get it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Would you consider hiring a full-time security guard?
Would I consider it? Sure.
Right.
I would, the title freaks me out a little bit, but yeah.
I think it would put the community mind at ease if this should go through. That, there was a full-time security guard there at all times.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
A couple questions. Would you accept the sex offender?
I'd have to get back to you on that. My gut instinct is we wouldn't be the appropriate place for it, but I don't know. So I don't want to give you a clear answer. I'm happy to get it for you if you need to get it.
Second one, if there is a stipulation that you could never ever add on or build or change what you're after, would you accept that?
I would think so long as that what we're doing relative to our licensing doesn't change. So from an inpatient standpoint, yeah.
I'm talking about building another building or adding on or.
I think at this point I would be comfortable to say yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a couple questions as well. You said that Wayne County residents are going to be priority. Okay, so 70 to 80 beds. Let's say your 70 to 80 beds are by chance full. And Wayne County calls and says, I have 2 people. What are you going to do?
So it's, first off, there's I'm not positive of the percentage, but DVAP allows for an overage to a certain percentage for a certain period of time. So for instance, the license for 70 beds, they might allow us 5% overage for a period of 2 or 3 days in order to shuffle people around. However, the best way I can answer that is if there's something that we could work with Wayne County SCA to hold a specific number of beds on a monthly basis within reason, we could do that for Wayne County residents.
Next question. Because it's not a perfect world, you're going to, let me rephrase this. You're going to allow visitors, and you're going to check for drugs, alcohol, paraphernalia, etc. In a perfect world, you're not going to catch everything. So, will you allow our canine to do a walk around? Maybe on a monthly to
The police officer?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. And the next question would be, due to the fact that our canine is not funded by the borough, it's funded by donations from community members, would you be willing to make a donation to our canine program?
I don't see why not.
I don't think it's funny.
I don't know exactly what that would be or what you're happy to entertain. We make charitable donations to a number of different groups already, so happy to talk about that.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Clarksville, you mentioned that you get inspected every year. Have you had any deficiencies in any of your facilities?
So there's always areas of improvement that are found by people who come on site to do inspections. It's kind of like an industry joke of, they have to justify their existence. So the things that we find most common are things relative to documentation, as far as this should be written in the patient's own words or something to that effect. Relatively minor, low risk, low impact type of things. In which case we have the ability to submit corrective action plans and prove that we fixed that deficiency.
In your March meeting, you said you're going to have 16 people, 16 patients to 1. Is that going to stay true? Is that just rehab specialists, 16 to 1, or is that all personnel?
I don't remember that ratio. That ratio is not one that exists with PDAP. I think what we might be thinking about is the number 16 was a detox specific number, but there was no staff member ratio. The ratio would always be higher than that anyway. It would never be a 16 to 1, even overnight, between nurses and behavioral health technicians. I don't recall that, so I can't speak directly to that, but that's not a ratio that would exist.
All right, so this facility is super safe, and why this building? Why not downtown Homestead? They have a lot of vacant spots there. Why this building?
So this building is laid out, I spoke briefly before to a question here. The building is laid out in one that bodes well to what we're attempting to do. It's not uncommon for nursing homes to also be retrofitted to this type of service that's being provided because of the number of rooms that exist. We've looked, in some other places, the size of the building really matters. We've looked at a couple other places that were simply not big enough or didn't make as much sense. Mainly not big enough. And it just makes a lot of sense based on the footprint of the building and the interior layout of the building is almost identical to what we need.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
No questions.
Shane Bailey, what is the success rate, the overall success rate of ARH's facilities?
Can you define?
Yes, sure. In other words, how many patients successfully leave the facility?
A very high number. So percentage-wise, I would venture to say over 92 or 93% from a corporate-wide standpoint complete the program.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Does any of the interviewers have any questions? Questions solicited by counsel?
I do, yes. Talk about your success rate, being 92, 93% complete the program. How many are sober and drug-free a year, 2 years later?
That's why I asked to define success. I can't give specifics to that because I don't have it in front of me. I can tell you that we have a robust alumni department at all of our locations, that there are full-time employees whose jobs are to stay in contact and connected with the people who complete the program, help them throughout their journey. We engage in alumni events. We do things like I think recently we did a fishing trip up here at Little Creek. I forget where we fished, but we have a department that's specific to staying in contact with them to give those specific answers. I'm happy to try to gather the data to provide it. I don't have it off the top of my head. I know every year we do an alumni picnic up here at Little Creek Lodge, and there's a bunch of people that show up to that from 10 plus years ago. And it's always a cool event. Same thing goes for our other locations as well. To give you that specific number, I'm not sure. I could probably get it pretty quickly and share
I
it.
think that would be an important number
Sure.
to hear. 2 years, 5 years.
Sure.
The other question I have, you keep saying that you do not take court-appointed patients. Yet your application clearly states that you prioritize placements from the Wayne County Drug and Alcohol Commission and the Wayne County Treatment Court. Can you explain the difference?
Between Wayne County Drug Treatment and Wayne County Drug Treatment Court?
No, your application says you will work to participate with them, prioritize placements from them. Yet you keep saying you don't take court-appointed placements at this time.
No,
What's the difference?
So I didn't say that we don't take court-appointed people at this time. So if there is somebody who's court-mandated to treatment, that in essence is somebody that we can accept. There's nothing that would prohibit us from accepting that person. Do we accept people solely on that? No. We have the ability to deny anybody for any reason or no reason at all. For admission into our facility. As far as what goes on from a Wayne County drug treatment standpoint, or from a drug treatment court or what have you, that's something that would be evaluated just as every other type of admission that would come through our department. The idea would be that Wayne County residents would take precedent if there were to be a waiting list. They would be in front of that waiting list and get in before a non-Wayne County resident.
And just to clarify, Jeff Zarachek, who's the director of Wayne County Drug and Alcohol Commission, is going to be testifying, and he's going to explain that arrangement with the treatment court. that that's voluntary, but he's gonna get into that one, because that might be 2 weeks from now, unfortunately, but he will be testifying.
Thank you. And from your business plan, can you tell us when you're talking, you're gonna have a 70 to 80 bed facility, how many beds do you need to have full to break even?
I can't answer that right now because I don't know. I don't know that I would be comfortable to share that anyway. But when, it's funny, we deal in Medicaid in every place that we operate. Ain't none of us retiring on something like that right now. These facilities don't make money like they used to 10 years ago. We deal with state-funded Medicaid. And there's not a whole bunch of money to be made there, but it's a valuable service that we've found a cool way to be able to operate a successful business. And that we would like to continue to do that to a population that needs the help.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions based upon the questions elicited by council? Hearing none, sir, thank you very much.
Yeah, Cheryl McDonough. Okay, with the question this gentleman just asked, on your application, it states there will be no walk-ins nor court-committed patients. It says right on here, no, there will be none.
Is that a question?
Well, it's a question because he just said that could be.
Put it in the form of a question. Can you answer that question, sir?
No.
Okay.
Okay,
Any other
all
questions?
right, will there be any walk-ins or court-committed patients? Your application says no.
I'd have to refer to Tony on that. If our application said something, I would refer to Tony on the way in which that's worded.
Well, just to try and clarify, we are going to address the idea that treatment court is what was being referred to there. Court committed does not mean they're being sentenced to go to the rehab. It does mean that they're being given an opportunity to try and seek treatment. And if they complete that, then they would come back to court and court would determine if they don't leave, for example, that how that would be handled. In terms of somebody, a prisoner being sentenced there, that type of court commitment will not happen.
Okay, well then this needs to be fixed because that's not what this says.
How do you argue? You have any other questions, ma'am?
How far is the West Virginia facilities from the nearest home?
I object that that's not part of the follow-up to the council.
The objection sustained. Any other questions?
Will they be looking for tax abatement at all?
Objection.
Sustained.
Council didn't ask about any of that stuff.
Okay, so, Mr. Riley? Now, it's almost 9:30. Do you have anybody that you can answer really swiftly?
Could I have 1 minute? Sorry, take me 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
Just to check it. 1 minute.
Just in case.
I'd like to call Rob Burns, which is I have very big street license today, but he's not going to be available. Mr. Dim, are you the principal with KLG Real Estate LLC?
Yes.
And you did enter into a letter of intent agreement with ARH, as I refer to them?
Yes.
And that's still in effect, correct? Did you have an opportunity, I think you were aware of some things that came up at the last session there back in March, to talk with the people who operate the daycare in the building currently?
Yes.
And what did you discuss with them and what were their thoughts?
We had met with them for a new location, and we found a place that would work for them. And it's going to actually be better than the location they're at today. And they would be able to move there at no cost and have a bigger facility.
And approximately how far would that be from where they are currently?
Less than half a month.
Okay. So they're pleased with that idea.
Yes.
Isn't it correct that you did make them aware of the fact that there might be a need to relocate them if the building was required by somebody, even before you entered into the agreement with ARH?
Yes.
Do you believe there's a need for this type of facility in the community? You certainly are familiar with this community.
Yes.
And you do support this and have voiced that support to other people, including the county and our state representatives and all?
Yes, we have. Our family is 100% equal. We're very invested in this community, and we know there's a need, and it's a duty for our community to step out and meet that need, and to support the people and help them through this time that they're having to move forward.
I have no other question.
Why don't you have Mr. Grimm identify that one exhibit regarding the agreement?
I asked about it. Yep. This exhibit that I marked as A1 is dated December 27, 2023. And it's a 3-page exhibit. It's listed as between KELG Real Estate and Alaram. Okay. And is that your signature?
Yes.
Okay, at the end of this. And you said that's still in effect, Carmen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you just ask one more question? What's the scope of that agreement, sir?
Well, the one thing I will point out is we did redact the purchase price, and it identifies the same property, is that correct, that we're talking about here? And it allows for the fact that there would be a further detailed agreement of sale if ARH was able to go through with this as a result of getting the zoning approval, is that correct?
Correct.
I'll go down the list. Mr. Sporer.
No special question.
McDonough.
No question.
Woodman. Van Anen.
No.
Miller.
No.
Miller.
No.
Howell.
No.
Hediker.
How much money will you make on this sale? Objection.
Stain. Marani.
No.
Drake.
No.
Pavlovich.
No.
Johnson.
No.
Maycheck.
No.
Hine.
No.
Robleski.
No.
Galapani.
No.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Council, questions?
I have none.